Armin in Bradenton, Florida. You're on the air with John Dean.
It's more than an honor, John, to get to talk to you.
Thank you.
Here's my question. Philosophically, does this come down to, do you think the overarching question here is, as a society, is America ultimately driven by reason and civility, or corporate allegiance and loyalty to such an entity?
Interesting question. And let me just extend that, if I may, John. Might there be a process that would serve us nearly as well as prosecutions that we could engage in after the statute of limitations has expired?
Well, that's where I think a lot of people get into the truth and reconciliation concept, that in our country we ought to be able to work that out without a commission. You know, what's interesting is in looking at history, and I happen to be looking at some early history right now, and looking at the way civility has swung back and forth in our country, and I think Obama is doing well to try to drive us back to a more civil society where we can address these things openly and not with just special interest prevailing and dominating. So your question is really very tough to answer, particularly in the context of how we resolve something like torture. Certainly, I think the president is trying to do it through a very civil, not in the legal sense, but in a dialogue sense way, where he's rejected this as a tool to use for dealing with terrorism, and let's go forward. And that's a very civil kind of approach. There's certainly strong feelings because of the bitterness that the Bush administration left behind, that these people shouldn't just be able to walk away with the damage they've done. And that's not necessarily a special or a corporate interest, but just a hard thing to swallow. So this is very interesting to see how this will play out.
Gary in Salem, you're on the air with John Dean.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Thom. On a previous appearance, Mr. Dean referred to a study that was a 25-year study on the authoritarian personality. I'm wondering if he would be able to share with us how we could find that source, or whether it's in one of his books.
First, it is in my book,
Gary.
Conservatives with Options. You can now just Google the term the authoritarian. That will take you to a professor's website who helped me and guided me through some of this social science, a fellow named Robert Altmaier up in Canada, who's done a lot of this work. He is the leading social scientist, and now he's, at my urging, has reduced all of his academic work and social science work into a layman's language, and indeed has a free book online that you can read about the authoritarian personality. So that'll take you right to it. So just Google The Authoritarian, and that will take you to his online book and site.
Great, thank you. Frank in Los Angeles, you're on the air with John Dean.
John, I appreciate you sticking up for democratic and constitutional principles. What they should do is appoint Janice Karpinski, General, who is
yes.
as special prosecutor, because she did write a book regarding her experiences. And the thing is, I noticed that the Republican Party covered their tracks by correcting the errors that Nixon and Reagan made in their administrations by appointing Republicans that were loyal to the party rather than to the Constitution.
Frank, we just have a half a minute left. I'm sorry.
Anyways, I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. John Dean, comments on that?
When I deal with that at some length in Broken Government. That's how I explain what's happened to the judiciary and the problems that started with Nixon and have run right through Bush, too.
And they're abundant. Do you think that they're, in the last 10 seconds here, that we might be well served by looking into going back and revisiting things like Iran-Contra?
History has never really examined Iran-Contra as deeply as it should. There's a lot of things went astray there, a lot of manipulation behind the scenes, We must hope it doesn't happen with torture, and I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, it's again the old daylight, the best sanitizer. John Dean, findlaw.com. His books, brilliant books. Worse Than Watergate, Broken Government, Conservatives Without Conscience. John Dean, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thank you, Tom.
Great speaking with you. 45 minutes past the hour.